Hello.
Well, we're here to have some more tea today.
Yeah. So we're talking both about this month's jasmine tea as well as last month's yellow tea. So we have them both here. This is this month's, if you can see. This is the jasmine green tea. And last month's yellow Mogan Huang Ya. So we'll just start preparing this. Let us know what you've been thinking about these two teas. They're both very different since one is scented and the other is not.
Jasmine tea being scented with jasmine oils as opposed to like blossom or another direct organic material.
Yeah, these are scented with the flowers, I believe.
Yeah.
And you can kind of tell the difference in the cup between the oils and flowers. The oils will be a lot more drying and astringent on the tongue, though this one is also a bit drying and astringent, and that's just the nature of jasmine tea. I believe it's a lot less smooth than non-scented teas. I don't know if any of you have discovered that difference in your drinking. Yeah, we're brewing both of these today at 80 degrees, which is 80 degrees Celsius, which is a nice in-between temperature for these two teas, which tend to exist. The jasmine tends to be a little cooler than the yellow, ideally, but there's enough overlap with these two teas and frankly most teas where it's okay.
What back here, of course, as we're brewing both of these in Gaiwans, I think one of the benefits of brewing a scented tea in a Gaiwan, especially, is its non-porous material doesn't get as funky as far as just an overall aroma that will take into effect.
Yeah, if you use clay vessel like a yixing or something, the scent will stick a lot longer because it's an added scent and not just natural from standard processing. It seems to be mild compared to other jasmines I've tried. Yes. So I tried multiple jasmine teas. Our cat's being a little bit of a butt right now, scratching at something. I've tried multiple jasmine teas to choose this one. And I like this one the most because of its mild aspects. It's a little bit less punchy. Sorry, this yellow wants to go a little longer. A little less punchy, and I think it's also has a very peach forward note to it that I really enjoy that I don't find in a lot of other jasmine teas.
Yeah, I find it to be a little subdued. It's definitely there, but it's not like in your face jasmine.
Yeah.
Because I have definitely experienced some jasmine and other flavored teas, which is really kind of the direction that they're in. I try to stick more with scented, but there's enough of an overlap there that I get some teas do actively end up being more flavored than scented. And that for me gets into that like perfumey kind of soapy realm, which I don't care for.
Yeah, neither of us are huge on the strong perfuminess that many scented teas can get, particularly when it's artificially scented. So if I go for a jasmine, I particularly want to make sure that it's scented with the flowers and not with oils. Yeah. What's interesting about this jasmine is that it's curled leaf, not pearled. So C instead of P. Um, jasmine pearls are probably the most well-known jasmine teas, and that's also partly because it's the most scented. It has the most iterations of the flowers being put together with the leaf for scent infusion. And a lot of jasmine pearls are gentle like this, but they are definitely more strong because of those multiple scentings, whereas this is probably a mid-range number. I'm not certain how many times this has been scented. But I definitely think it's a pleasant, very light jasmine, great for warm autumn days, I think.
Well, we still got a few of them.
Yeah.
They're definitely few and far between at this point in the season. We're now going to be moving on and drinking some of our yellow tea, the Morgan.
Yeah, the Mogan Huangya from Mount Mogan. I'm going to cleanse my palate a bit.
Yeah.
Always have water nearby if you're drinking multiple teas. It'll help.
Yeah, it'll also help, hopefully, with you not just ingesting only caffeinated beverages.
Yeah.
To varying degrees of success. What I find kind of interesting and is a really easy comparison to make because we're having these two teas side by side is the jasmine has this kind of like sharp mouthfeel to it, where the Morgan has a much more buttery kind of rounded flavor profile as well as mouthfeel.
Yeah.
Which I find vastly more pleasant.
Yeah. The mouthfeel, I think, is the biggest difference between these two teas because Mogan Huangya as a yellow tea is a little bit more on the floral side than many other teas that we've enjoyed lately. It's definitely not as floral as a jasmine scented, but it's a lot more smoother in the mouth, very creamy. It's pleasant all around, whereas the dryness of jasmine can be a little bit unpleasant sometimes, I think.
Yeah, or at the very least is pretty actively different. These both do pretty well with like 3 to 4-ish infusions. Beyond that, I find both of these tend to lose a lot of their luster, which makes them kind of good for evening tea sessions for myself. As otherwise, I would just continue brewing.
Yeah.
I end up brewing a lot of to just keep going. As long as the leaf is giving me something, I'll try pushing it and seeing how far we can get. And in the late evening, that can backfire.
Yeah, that can cause some problems.
Yeah.
It'll keep you up late.
Up late, or just also many trips to the restroom.
That too. Yeah, though we did introduce grandpa style brewing with the Mogan, which I think helps if you want the Mogan to last longer, because one of the aspects of grandpa style brewing is to just keep adding leaf, and you're drinking from the same vessel that you're brewing in.
Yeah.
So as soon as the flavor starts to die, you just add more leaf and more water and you're set.
And that's like coffee mug kind of brewing. Is generally speaking how you see that playing out, where you're not bothering to strain it out into a secondary vessel. You're just dealing with leaf matter.
Yeah, the cup will get a lot more bitter because it's a constant infusion, but it's really enjoyable for a lot of the time. Does that tea kettle have a temperature setting? Yes. So we prefer kettles that allow you to control temperature by degree.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah. It's very lazy of us, but it is very
Yeah.
nice. What I've found in my brewing is Bonavita makes really nice kettles with pretty good temperature controls, and so doesn't Fellow via their stag line of kettles.
Yeah. The trick to find a good kettle for your tea water is to look at coffee kettles, not tea kettles.
Yeah.
Because at least in the Western world, they're marketed very differently, and there's a lot less care put into tea kettles. So you'll have like settings for different teas, which like works in a pinch, but it's not always great if you like your tea different, or if the tea is going to behave differently than what the settings want.
Yeah. And with an electric kettle like this, what's also really nice about these ones from Bonavita, as well as the ones that Stag makes. Fellow makes. Sorry, Fellow makes them. They are called Stag kettles. Mm-hmm. Is that on the lids you also have a cutout that is actually designed to be able to help you dial in your kettle. So it's actually meant where you are able to place a thermometer in through there to get the register what your water temp is, and then you can reprogram your base if it's not showing a true temperature. So the programmability of them is pretty nice too.
I thought that was just to let out steam.
No. No,
I don't know these things.
Multi-purposed. Also, I personally, I think Jace has gone into this direction more, being exposed to my kettles more and more. Really like ones with what's here referred to as a gooseneck. So you're pouring from the bottom of the kettle, not from the top. This does generally mean slower pours because you can't actually get it to go that much faster by continuing to tilt. Mm-hmm. There's only a set amount of flow that you can get out. That I find as a good thing. It helps with consistency, and what we've have talked about before and will continue to talk about very often is to keep getting good cups of tea is keep trying to aim for consistency. Even when it's bad, if it's consistently bad, then you know what needs to change. Mm-hmm.
Or you have a starting point of like, this is exactly what I've done. I'm going to adjust it this way and see what happens.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't know this. How does the gooseneck help with consistency?
So for me, it's rather than anything else, it's being able to pour into your Gaiwan or Yixing in an even flow. So you're never punching down the leaves in one area and over extracting from that one area. It's kind of like in coffee, how you can get a over extraction when all of the water funnels and creates a channel through a space.
Okay.
In tea, it tends to happen less because we're letting the water infuse rather than extract. So there's less of a force through as far as we're letting it sit around and hang out equally. And also for me, it's a timing wise of if I'm pouring, there's the consistency of knowing how long it takes to fill that kettle as opposed to, or fill that Gaiwan or Yixing with that kettle that has the gooseneck as opposed to a sudden torrent of hard water that just enters quickly.
Okay.
So for me, I have found it's that level of consistency.
Yeah. Interesting. I haven't thought that deeply about pouring water. But
Which is also why I have like 2-hour tea sessions and Jace has like an hour tea session.
yeah, and I also do things during my tea sessions, whereas you sit.
Yeah.
Two very different perspectives.
Which are very befitting to our two different teas today. I would say that probably the jasmine tea that we have here today really is well suited for a quick flash infusion and being able to do other things at the same time. This Morgan is a little more rounded and I think is kind of demanding that more attention.
Yeah, I agree. And like part of that is like the lower notes of the Mogon want more attention during the steep of like this one can get oversteeped pretty easily. And like it's not bad when it's oversteeped, it's just a little bit more bitter. And so if you want to like stay away from those stronger bitter notes, you need to be a little bit more mindful of the brew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the jasmine is a little bit more easygoing comparison.
I think it appears easier going because it starts off spunkier. So you're already, or at least I'm expecting that like sharpness to begin with.
Yeah.
That then can get toned up or toned down as opposed to the yellow tea, which I find doesn't want to have that sharp spunkiness.
Yeah, it is interesting that we're characterizing these two teas in this way because like in terms like spunky and sharp and stuff have a youthful quality to it. And I think in the tea world, we see jasmine tea as a very youthful tea, but it's a very old tea.
Oh, yeah.
There's a pretty direct line all the way back to Han Dynasty when jasmine came to China from Iran, I think.
I think that makes sense.
Persia, through Persia, or from Persia through somewhere. It went from one end of the Silk Road to the other end of the Silk Road, and that's all I really remember off the top of my head right now. And it has gone through a lot of like changes over time, naturally. But I think as a category, a jasmine scented tea is older than a yellow tea.
Yeah, I'd say that. And also what I think is kind of an interesting juxtaposition is that jasmine tea is both a like very classic way that I found that a lot of younger individuals get into tea and finding it, but it also tends to be a very, very much a constant of a elderly generation in tea culture as well.
I mean, it is a very traditional gift to give. Starting in, I think, the Song Dynasty was a gift among the imperial court, and now it's a fairly traditional gift to give visitors or important guests. Because it's nice and pleasant, and it does have cultural significance in China.
It's largely unoffensive, and I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah, it's like I don't think I've met anyone who hates jasmine tea. Like it's not either of our favorite, but like we enjoy good jasmine.
Yeah. If someone's going to offer it, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
Am I going to drink it every day? Definitely not.
But it's enjoyable when you want it.
Every so often, sitting down for a cup of jasmine tea, a bowl of rice, and conversations is pretty on point. Is there a direction that you would rather go these two teas, Jace? As far as that is to say, I think they're both pretty nice, pretty enjoyable. Again, I edge my way towards the yellow personally.
For drinking.
Yeah, for drinkability.
Okay. I thought you meant conversation.
That too.
I don't know. What would you like? The jasmine's probably almost dead.
The jasmine's likely about done for.
Because this is infusion 3, I believe.
Yeah. 3, or it might be 4. I've lost count.
Yeah. This is a very typical tea sit. I don't know when we've started, what we're doing.
Yeah, but we're drinking tea.
And that's all that matters. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions in the chat about these teas or other teas in general or life? Teaware.
What I think is kind of interesting with this yellow tea is it as a Taiwanese tea it's not? No. We're gonna definitely not. Yep, drink shy province.
Yeah. Well, it does kind of taste Taiwanese.
Yeah, it does. And I guess some more of that is mixed in with the tradition of tea masters, which you see more so in Taiwanese teas, and less so currently, at least, in Chinese teas, where it's worth noting that this tea is marketed and is pretty unique in the fact that its lineage, so tea lineage, is derived from a matriarchal standpoint as opposed to a patriarchal. So I don't know if you want to get into any of that research that you found.
Yeah. So this tea, I'm forgetting her name, but the tea master who holds the cultural knowledge of this tea and the knowledge of the proper processing of this tea learned, I believe, from her mother, and there's now 2 more generations after her of women in the bloodline who are producing this tea. And that's really rare in the tea world. Is mostly a male-driven industry.
Dominated, even more than driven.
Yeah, dominated. And that's like worldwide patriarchal, whatever. Like there's a lot of things to that, but the reality is that there aren't many matriarchal lines in existence currently, and there's not enough knowledge about lines that no longer exist to know if there used to be more matriarchal lines or not. But this is one of the few ones that we know of, and is still producing really great tea. This Mogan Huangya, since traditional yellow teas take longer production and much more physical production than green teas, which are usually the other option for producers who make yellow tea. Most yellow teas are produced on demand more than anything else. So like this tea was requested. I forgot my train of thought, honestly.
And as someone was saying in comments, as they were talking about really having this tea grow on them, this yellow tea. And I think that's pretty accurate of this one. And I think also that's pretty accurate of categories of tea that I don't drink often, is that I remind myself that I like them as I consume them. It's that problem that I know that I really like Chopware, and I know I really like dark oolongs. And then because of that, I end up drinking them so often and so much that I then drink a really nice green or a really nice, in this case, yellow tea or what have you, and I drink it, and at first I'm missing all of those notes that I enjoy in those other teas. And I'm like, oh, this would be so much better if they just upped the nuttiness of it or this or that. But as I sit with it and really come to accept the tea for what it's offering, as opposed to what I'm trying to get out of it, it generally becomes a more pleasurable tea. So then when I'm almost out of it, I'm like, I really need to buy more of that now.
Yeah. I think that also speaks to the style of processing that yellow tea goes through. It is a fermented tea, and the fermentation of this tea is a lot more similar to shengpuer than shoupuer, because it does sit in moisture and humidity, and then is stopped and then re-humidified and stuff like that. So it is very similar to shengpuer, and like, so those sharper notes are reminiscent of sheng. Like, this could be a green sheng in some ways. But it's not, because the rest of the processing is much more similar to a green tea than a puer. But I really enjoy it because it reminds me that I do enjoy some aspects of sheng. Like, sheng is hard for me to enjoy sometimes because when it's young, it's so sharp. And this is a tea that isn't quite as sharp as really young sheng, but still has that in it. So it is like a tea that you have to sit with to enjoy.
It really does want to have you drink it a few times to really get to know it and get to enjoy it, which can be a challenge. I've picked up some teas where I thought I was going to enjoy it, and it's an uphill battle, for better or worse.
Yeah.
We've got these two teas, of course. Now we're in late-ish October, mid to late October.
It's the 10th.
It's the 10th. It feels like mid to late October.
It does feel like that. It's exhausting, but it's still early October.
So these two are kind of a weird one right now for me, as I'm shifting more and more towards my late autumn roasted nuttier notes. But these are lingering teas, I feel like, where they work really well when you want to hold on to those things.
Well, and they are teas that are ready around this time of year. Production does take all summer sometimes.
For instance, the Morgan, the yellow tea that we're having, was harvested back in March, processed after that, and then got out our way, specifically in late March.
August.
And near the tail end of August is when it was really available for us.
But September, October is when higher quality jasmine teas tend to be available on the market, because jasmine's availability starts much later than tea. So the scenting process of making jasmine tea really only starts in July.
Again, unless you are taking the buds and flowers and processing out their essential oils to then incorporate. Which are good, but can definitely very quickly be an overpowered jasmine flavor.
That's a good word.
That's kind of that classic thing of, if you're making a stock and you're salting your stock, it's really tasty until you start to let it actively cook. And then as it reduces, you're like, why did I oversalt this so much? And it's because
I've done that.
Everything has concentrated down into its more condensed concentrated form. I don't have much to really go on with these two teas other than they're pretty tasty. I'm really enjoying them. And I'm looking forward to we decided what our next tea on the docket is?
Yeah, next month we're going to explore Hoji Cha,
Right. Yeah.
which is a great introduction to fall, I think, because it has some of the more nutty notes.
Yeah. Hoji Cha being a Japanese green, or will also be categorized by some places as a twig tea, which is especially accurate. So it's
it depends. The most common Hoji Cha is a twig tea, but I'm planning on getting into different kinds of Hoji Cha because it's a really interesting world of this really unique Japanese tea.
Yeah, and it's also unique because it's Hoji Cha. Although you can get some really nice, high quality, very enjoyable Hoji Cha, it is generally speaking a byproduct of making other Japanese teas.
Yeah, most commonly it's used or it's made by material that isn't made into sencha or kuki cha or matcha.
That are the offcuttings.
Yeah. So, which is why it's most often a twig tea, because most of those teas don't have twigs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm saying that it'll be interesting to taste some differences from what they've experienced in the past. And yeah, I think for the most part, Hoji Cha has a very classic flavor. It doesn't stray too far between the different kinds of Hoji Cha because there's really only one main style of processing.
Yeah.
And the difference comes in the material that is used.
Exactly. And that's where we can really get into Hoji Cha from different areas tasting differently based on the terroir that they're being grown in.
Yeah.
And I find, and we'll get into it when we get there, that those toasted rice and kind of nutty warm notes that exist in that Hoji Cha do a really great way keeping away the beginning of the winter chill. Of just very internally warming.
I mean, part of that is that it's the hottest brewed Japanese tea as well.
That is true.
It wants to be brewed at 90 degrees Celsius, whereas most Japanese greens want 75 to 80. So it's significantly hotter than most other Japanese greens.
We'll look forward to getting into that, and of course sharing more tea with you all via this platform going forward.
Yeah. But I think that's it for this month.
Yeah.
Let us know if you have any further questions about these two teas or any other tea in your life. We're always happy to answer questions. And we will see you next month.
All right. See you all.